Are you ready to get your button pushed? You're tuned in to What's the Reason for This, the podcast where music meets madness, friends become family, and every conversation finds its own groove. Kick back, laugh loud, and let's find the reason together. The button has been pushed. Hello and welcome. What's up, guys? We're back. Can't wait to have a conversation with our guest today, but first, I got to talk to my co-host. How you doing, Shay?
I'm doing okay, buddy. How about yourself? I'll take that back. I have a nice dull throb right here from a weekend of celebrating turning 40. I am acutely aware that I'm 40, given how much I drank this weekend. So, yeah, that's
and as you know, my 40th was 10 days before yours, and I threw my back out by sitting on a bass boat. So this is 40. We are pathetic. But we have somebody that's super amazing on the show for you this week. Last year, we were actually able to have Andy Hall on, and now I can't tell you how stoked I am to have the Jeremy Garrett. What's up, Jeremy? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. How are you guys?
We're as you can tell, we're old men now, so we're just trying to figure it out. And I'm sure I should complain as you're coming off a 28-day run. Are you not?
Yeah, I know. He's over here just thinking like, "Shut up, guys."
I know. I was just thinking, man, to be 40 again, how wonderful would that be?
He's like, "Oh fuck, we'll do 56 shows."
I turned 50 this year, so I got to figure out what to do for my 50th birthday party. But yeah, I'm touring like crazy, like never before, and I feel good and just ready to rage, you know, like always. So I'm just enjoying life right now.
And it's wild because as the people that watch our show know, I was able to get a media pass for RockyGrass. So I spent a lot of time. Shay was being a good friend to someone for another wedding. And I said, fuck it, we're going to ride this out. And we had an amazing time at RockyGrass. And I saw you were an instructor there. I also saw you do a sit-in with the Sam Bush. And then you guys, as the Dusters, actually closed out RockyGrass. But what I wanted to talk a little bit about was your opportunity to teach and instruct, right? So like, how was that from breaking free from playing shows to now like teaching this? Because it goes from a young age all the way to a much older age, right?
Yes, for sure. And RockyGrass is like one of the best camps and little festivals around. You know, if you're unfamiliar with that place, it's just super family, friendly environment and safe and just kind of really great music lineup and really great teachers that all teach there together. And it's a pretty big camp, many students. It's a lot of fun. I think it's for me, teaching is kind of hearkening back to what I did in my early years as a professional musician, trying to make it. I think a lot of musicians teach, as a way to supplement income, and especially at first. And so I did quite a lot of that, coming out of the chute. And then we, as a band, the Dusters, when we started early on, we started playing RockyGrass early in our career. And they asked us to start teaching that camp. And so that was pretty fun. And I hadn't done it in a really long time. And I do enjoy teaching, although, because you get to analyze your own playing and just kind of maybe leave an impact on a future generation and, for your sound and that kind of stuff. But the main reason why I wanted to do it was because my little girl, 8 years old, wanted to be in the bluegrass camp. And so she joined the camp. And so we did it kind of together. And she took the kids camp, but I was able to be around and a fly on the wall and watch her performances and stuff like that. So for me as a dad, that was like the ultimate thing to do. And so it was just fun to kind of get back there and teach that camp for a solid week. It was a lot of fun.
Well, and it's wild because for some people that may not know, you come from a line of performers, right? Like you picked up playing fiddle at 3 because of your father, who was influential in putting together even like, I'm pretty sure, the Bluegrass Association of Idaho, correct?
Yeah, that's right. My dad came from a long line of singers and mostly through church. He used to go to this, real traditional church that used shape notes for singing as opposed to like staff lines. If you ever have seen that kind of thing, it's a super old time way of singing. And so that was it's like a real gospel oriented thing. But then his father-in-law, my great grandpa through my mom's side, got him into bluegrass. And so him and my mom met really young, got in, and he got into bluegrass, playing some guitar and stuff. And then one day he had this dog that passed away while he was at school, actually, and his parents were trying to figure out a way that they could try to cheer him up because they knew how bummed he was going to be when he came home. So they got him a guitar. And so that guitar was there when he came home from school, and he was, of course, super bummed about the dog, but the guitar like kind of took up a place in his heart, and he just started practicing a lot, listening to a lot of Flatt and Scruggs and that kind of thing. And there was an old couple down the street who the lady played a violin in the Philharmonic, and she ended up actually getting cancer or something and passing away. And her husband had this violin and walked down the street one day and just handed it to my dad and said, "Here, you'll know what to do with this." And my dad never played fiddle ever, but it was always sitting in the corner of the house while I was growing up. And of course, I started in Suzuki, so I was only 3 years old. I couldn't hold a full-size fiddle. It was just barely a tiny little thing where I started. But I was maybe 11 years old when I pulled this fiddle out of the corner. I was finally big enough to play it. And that's the one I still play today. It's just an awesome violin, and has just, kind of had a special place in my heart, kind of irreplaceable, I guess you could say. So.
Well, and I know that it's near and dear to your heart, and I know Shay wanted to ask about the fiddle as well, but I had read some articles about you talking about traveling as a musician and your instrument, right? And so like for you to have this thing that's like irreplaceable, it's funny because people don't understand like how hard it is to like go from gig to gig or get from show to show, and they're like, oh, the Dusters, they're going to take planes or they're going to do this, and it's like even when you're on a plane your instruments are getting smashed. And so it was interesting to read your perspective, but what do you do to protect, like that's the thing you've been playing for 39 years then, right?
Kodi and I said we wanted to go broke. The quickest way to go broke is to start an airline that caters only to traveling musicians across the country.
Yeah, maybe you get rich. I don't know. We have to.
Yeah, I don't know, man. You could have a little stage in the corner of the plane. It'd be great.
Maybe so. I feel like we have to pay a lot because we always have to have premium. We can't be like the last on the plane ever. We always have to have like the first ticket somehow, or the first batch, early boarding, which always costs a lot of extra money. You got to stick with one airline. Points and
you got to get
cards,
status, Jeremy. Stuff. You got to get your status.
You got to get your status, man. And it's good. It's handy. It's helpful for sure. But even if you get your status, it's still not all that great. And, luckily for me, I'm a fiddle player, so that's the most transportable thing. And I've got this really tight BAM case that only fits the violin, so I could almost stick it under the seat in front of me. I probably could. I've never done that, but it fits so discreetly. I haven't really had any problems yet. But in the past, there's been a time or two where I haven't been able to take my fiddle on board, and I just won't get on the plane. It's as simple as that. And
so they're like telling you have to check it or something?
Yeah, when they and I've had them, I've done that. I used to have a Colton, like it's supposed to be a flight worthy case for a fiddle, and it is. I mean, I trusted it a lot, actually. I used that case for a long time, but then I ended up having to gate check it, what they call gate checking it, because I was a Southwest customer for a long time. And you gate check it, and then it's supposed to come back, at the gate. And I was like, would you mind being real careful with this, to the guy that was like taking it from me? And he was like, oh yeah, no problem. And he took it. And the next thing I know is he threw it down that little metal slide from the
slide on the stairs.
And it just went sliding out across the asphalt, like sparks and shit were shooting out from I was like, what the, this is like 100-year-old fiddle, it's like my life. And you're just like tossing it out through like a sled out through the hot parking lot.
And that was with care, Jeremy. So think what they would do if you didn't ask for that,
you
right?
You got the special treatment.
Yeah. So I mean, and I have horror stories about guitars I've tried to take and had to check and that kind of stuff, and definitely been with a few bummed out musicians who find out all their stuff is tore up. So it's stressful, and. But the things are meant to be played, I feel like, at the end of the day, and even though my instrument is a very fine instrument, it's worth a decent amount of money, I guess you could say. But for me, it's irreplaceable. And for me,
Because it's your tone, it's your sound,
it's the
right?
thing. The response of the instrument is so perfect. It was made by this man named Herman Hagberg in 1914, and it was in
Oh my
Berkeley,
god, I love
California.
this kind of information about an instrument. Please
It's
give me
so
the
cool,
history
man.
lesson.
This guy, he's in the American Fine Violin Makers book, which is a rarity, and just to have him mentioned in there at all is like super. I don't know, like thin slice or however you want to say it. Like it's like highfalutin just to be mentioned in that book as a sort of craftsman. But he was mentioned in there as like a very fine violin maker indeed. And he started out in Minnesota and then he ended up in Berkeley, California. But this violin that I have was around the time he patented this idea for hollow bracings inside of a fiddle. So he patented the idea, and it made, I think, these violins very special in the sense that they're really loud and their tone is, you know, edgy and throaty, basically perfect for bluegrass, even though they were geared more towards a classical thing. So through the years, I've acquired a couple more fiddles made by this same guy. I have one that was made in 1899 that is pre these scallop bracings inside the fiddle. And then 1914, and then I have one in 1916, which is actually an absolute beast of a violin. And I just haven't had it set up yet to play electrically, you know, to be plugged in. But the response on these violins are just absolutely epic. And I played some other things through the years. I played a few 5 strings, and you know, I also endorse Glasser bows, which I use their bows exclusively. They're awesome, and they make
How much does that? How much does that play into the response of the fiddle?
a
Your
lot,
bow.
a lot actually. And you know, I didn't used to pay as much attention to it as I do now, but the weight and the structure of the bow from end to end is, you know, just really important. There's like a response there. It's very subtle, of course. You know, if you're talking to really, really fine players, you know, that are, you know, into like the super fine detail of things, they can feel it. Your normal cat probably wouldn't notice all that much. You might say it's a little bit heavier or a little bit lighter, you know, but I like the carbon fiber bows. I think are really great. I think they're as good in my mind as any wooden bow that I have personally used. And the wooden bows can be extremely expensive and really hard to make, and they're very delicate. Some of them have like ivory tips and stuff like that, and it's just a whole different ball game. So I kind of like using the carbon fiber because a lot less can happen to them, but they still get the strength, and the response is all right there. So, but
And
yeah,
what's like the what's the life of like the? Because is it horsehair that's on?
yeah. Well,
Because I've seen you saw that thing in half and light a room on fire. So
Yeah.
like, how long does it last for, like, compared to like a recreational player, like maybe your daughter? I don't know what instrument she picked up during bluegrass camp, but like, how long would it last for someone compared to like someone like you, where I literally see you pulling them off like mid song, right? Just like getting
yeah.
rid of these things flailing in your
Well,
face.
it really kind of depends on the quality of the horsehair, of course, and what kind of strength you're using there. You know, sometimes I have a guy rehair my bows, and I use really fine quality horsehair that is, you know, they last a long time. They do different procedures to it to make it last. And I'm a lot less hard on them than I used to be. I used to be so hard on them that I would just buy cheap bows and shred them, and then when they were finally shredded, I would just throw them out in the audience as sort of a gimmick.
And
And
I was totally at a show where you
Yeah.
fucking launched one into the crowd. So that's why I wanted to ask, but that was probably 10 years ago
it
now,
was a
which is
long time
fucking,
ago, and I started worrying that maybe I'd hit somebody or
you'd
somebody
poke
would
somebody
use
in
it
the
as a
eye out.
weapon or something. You know, and
Oh,
I was like, I probably better
fucking
quit.
Fun
And it,
goddamn.
story. I actually do know a buddy of mine who went to one of your shows many years ago, and he, I guess, you know, toward you were doing your thing, and he turned around to say something to a friend, and he got hit right in the back of the head with your bow, and he's like,
oh,
to this day, that's one of my happiest moments is getting clocked by that bow. I tell you, he talks about it all the time. So like,
that's
it made
funny.
his day, so that's something.
But
Well, it's fun,
it's
man. It's fun to just try different things. They also use synthetic hair, so you can use, like, if I go back east where it's super humid, sometimes horsehair doesn't really tighten all the way up. So Glasser, Andrew Glasser, the Glasser fiddle guy, came up with this process where he acid washed nylon string, which they've been using nylon string for a while, but this is a new process to sort of notch the nylon so you can cake some rosin into it so you can actually pull some good tone.
Catch some
And
of the
I've been
string.
using
Yeah.
that bow a lot. That's kind of pretty high tech stuff, but I've been using that bow a lot and it works great. So there's a few different things out there for sure.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's crazy because of the progression, right? And I saw you guys at RockyGrass. You headlined the last night, and Andy comes out there and he goes, "This is our 20th year," and I was like, "Gulp! What the fuck?
I
20
know.
years? Really?" Like I literally remember seeing you guys coming up in like the mid early 2000s, and it feels like fucking yesterday. And then for him to get up on that stage and tell us that it's been 20 years, it's like, okay, gross. We're all old now. Like
I
this is
know,
fucking
dude.
real.
It is, I guess. I mean, it's weird. It's age and all that stuff. Time definitely screams by. It doesn't feel. I mean, it definitely. I got 20 years worth of memories, but it doesn't feel like 20 years has gone by. The time hasn't been long. It's definitely gone by too fast, and it's unbelievable. We we personally set out on this mission to on purpose to start a band, to be entrepreneurs of our own thing. And it was a big risk that we were all taking. I was on the one of the older ones in the group, so I had already kind of done it already a time or two in the music industry with other bands, and so I was
So
kind
where were
of.
you at? Because I know in the past, Jeremy, we had talked to Andy, and he was actually playing with Dolly Parton, which we
Yeah,
didn't know. So where were
yeah.
you at? Because it was what 2005 was when you guys really started to just like leave where you were. So what were you doing at the time, and what was that thought process to be like, all right, we're fucking doing this, boys. Like, let's go.
Yeah, it was definitely a come to Jesus moment, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, and as a musician, it's a big risk because it's all risky, but then there's also this comfort level that you can get into when you're working for somebody as a musician, as kind of a side guy. And I think a lot of people in Nashville, which is where I was living at the time, when I met all those guys, we all met there in Nashville. And I was there in Nashville for about 13 years doing the thing, man, songwriting and sessions and this and that, whatever you can do to get money to pay rent and stuff, and and all music related and that kind of thing. But like the whole thing with the other guys in the band, they came from Berkeley and they had some connection before I had sort of come to meet some of them, and then we all converged on this place called IBMA, which is like the International Bluegrass Music thing,
Yep.
and so when that happened, when we converged at IBMA, so Andy was playing with a few different people. I think that was even before he was with Dolly and Earl Scruggs. I was playing with a guy named. Actually, my dad and I had a band together called the Grasshoppers for like 8 years, and we had traveled
Oh
all over the
wow.
United States, and we built a bus, like a touring over the road bus. I learned how to drive a 40-foot bus over the road like a regular tour bus. And then we sold, I don't know, some crazy amount of records all over the country. And then we decided to all move to Nashville. And when we moved to Nashville, the whole thing fell apart and everybody got all pissed off. So that thing went downhill. Me and my dad, of course, are still tight, but the band was no longer. And so that's what kind of set me out on my way to freelance. And I was teaching a lot at a music store there called Shuff's Music in Franklin, Tennessee, along with whatever I could do, man. At the time, it was like you could play Broadway for 4 hours in a row. There was no, I mean, there was a union and stuff, but you would still, no one cared. You play Broadway for 4 hours, no breaks, and you could walk out with like $20. Like
Oh shit.
that's how it was. You might make 50, but you could walk out of there with like $15 or some crazy thing, depending on what shift you got. So I was doing some of that. I was doing some teaching and I was freelancing. And it just so happened I was working with a bunch of different bluegrass guys. And luckily for me, bluegrass guys at the time weren't, like crazy busy touring schedules. So I was working with a lot of them. I was working with Bobby Osborne, who was, part of the Osborne Brothers. I
Yeah.
played the last Osborne Brothers show ever, actually, before they split up. And then Bobby
Where was
started.
that at?
That was at Maggie Valley in Tennessee, and they did a show out there. And Sonny announced his retirement, and he actually uh, well, this is probably I shouldn't get into some of the weeds on this, but he announced his retirement, and they weren't able to do the gigs anymore together, and so Bobby was kind of on the spot to try to book a bunch of touring. So he had his touring going on, and I played with him, and then at the same time I was leapfrogging. I played with him in Kentucky on Thursday night, and then I'd drive to Illinois and play with this guy named. Uh, uh, Audie Blaylock on Friday, and then Saturday I played with Ronnie Bowman in some other state. He was one I played with a lot, actually. Ronnie Bowman.
How great was his hair?
It was great, and I also played with a dude named Chris Jones, and so I freelance a lot with all these bluegrass dudes.
That's
and,
awesome.
You know, I put like 100,000 miles on my car in 1 year, just kind of driving myself. Sometimes I would drive all night long to play with these guys, but I was making money, and that's kind of how I got my name kind of known in the circuit. And, you know, when I met those guys, it was kind of just like a good partnership in that way, because we were all sort of, you know, good musicians and whatever. But yeah, it took a little while to sort of pull the trigger. At finally, I guess really the reason why I joined Ronnie Bowman's band full time, which is where Andy Hall was, and our mandolin player at the time, Jesse Cobb, was in the band. So we were all in Ronnie's band, and that's how I met those two dudes. And when I joined their band, we decided, you know, we played with Ronnie for a while, and Ronnie was great. He's such an amazing, you know, singer and just a great talent all around, and I love that dude. And he was, you know, I'm a fan, so it was like a really big treat to get to play with a dude like that. And but we also all of us saw the end of the line as far as like what a side musician can do, especially in the bluegrass world. Like, and it's no offense to anyone who does, you know, who chooses that path, but like, we all didn't want the end of the road for us to be just side manning, you know. And
well,
we were
even then, this was
we were already at the top of the game, because we were playing with like Ronnie Bowman, like, who was a superstar in the bluegrass world. I don't know if you guys know
exactly.
that.
Yeah. Oh no, 1,000%.
And then Dolly Parton and Earl Scruggs, like, we're playing with the best, and we were just kind
the
of like,
top tier. Exactly.
Yeah, we're just kind of like,
and bluegrass wasn't as popular as it's become now, right?
Right.
But you guys like made this jump. You had gone from pillars in the bluegrass community at that time and historically, right? And then you're like, hey, we're gonna start this, and it wasn't 2 years later. You pull the triple threat from IBMA, right? The best new band, best album, best single, right? And it was like, the Dusters are fucking here. And it was wild because with the timing, like Cheese during its heyday, and then I feel like Yonder Mountain, where you guys were really picking up this pace in bluegrass, and you were adding some psychedelic jams to it and starting to make it this like jamgrass that it has really started to take over nowadays, right? But for you guys, did you know that's what you wanted? Were you going for that fast and heavy? What was it when you guys first, because that first album is still something I can listen to front to back. It's amazing. It's timeless. For people that don't know, they should. And it's wild to me because there's people that like come into the scene now because of some of these other names, and they don't know about some of these foundational folks like you guys that really help transcend this genre.
Well, you know, I think there was a lot going on already. Obviously, you mentioned a couple, like String Cheese Incidents was around, and you know, even I think Pandolfi, he had like a little bit of, you know, run in with those guys. Like, he was playing some with them and some with Drew Emmett. Oh, that's what it was. He was playing with Drew Emmett and Bill Nershi band. And
the Emmett Nershi band,
so,
yes.
Yeah, Emmett Nershi band. So he was sort of a witness to that, how that scene could work, I guess you could say. But that wasn't happening in bluegrass. But it's a weird thing because, like, I'm talking like traditional, like,
for sure,
like the stuff I have my roots in, and so. But that stuff, it's prime for it because the foundation, the musicianship, it's like jazz in the sense that the musicianship is extremely strong. You have to be badass to play bluegrass. And like, there's another facet of bluegrass, which is a little bit more jammy, which is less about intricate playing and more about feeling and experience and that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? And that's a whole different thing that we didn't really know about at the time. Like, we were on the fringe of it, you know, because we had buddies and stuff that were in the scene, but we weren't doing it ourselves. We were playing bluegrass, man. Like
Yeah.
we were full straight on, like playing like hardcore instrumental stuff that was intricate and like more arranged than your average cat by a long shot, but like also, you know, still bluegrass. And then what changed the course of what we did was we went to Germany for 5 weeks, and we toured all over, mostly Germany, some in the fringe countries around, but it was mostly Germany for 5 weeks. It was during the month of May. And they had all these things that they called Zelt festivals, which they had these big festivals on the weekends that were all in these big giant circus style tents. And we had a bunch of these festivals where we were booked to play in these Zelt festival tents. And we would go show up for sound check. And it was weird because we'd show up and there were like barricades and stuff in front of the stage. And we were just like, who do they have that's going to be big here that's playing? You know, we wondered. And like all this stuff. And then we would show up and play our show. We do just headline the night or whatever because we were the band from America. And it was like we were the Beatles. It literally, people were screaming and losing their absolute minds. And we decided right then and there, we had been playing for a bunch of people sitting in lawn chairs looking at us, you know, and folding up and leaving and stuff.
Traditional
And
bluegrass.
yeah, traditional bluegrass. Instead, we're playing these things where the kids are like shaving their heads and they're like, you know, going bonkers. And, you know, just that was like, this is what we want. And so then when we kind of came back, we realized, you know, early on, these festivals were high, these bluegrass festivals, because we won those awards, we were at the top. They were hiring us to headline their festivals in order to draw the young crowd into their festivals, and it was smart for them because their crowds were getting old and, you know, sort of going by the wayside, and they were trying to replenish their scene. But it was sort of backfiring for us and them, because what would happen was they would put us on as the headliner as the last of the night. They would pay us a bunch of money to headline their show in hopes that we bring the young crowd. And then like there would be like 10 or 15 young people standing there and the rest of the old people would go home. So
Pissed
we did
off.
that.
Yeah.
We did that a lot, and we were like, man, we're at the top of this game. We got to get out of here. So we had to go back to the trenches and start playing clubs and do the club circuit where no one came to our show, literally building our audience one at a time in the trenches. And that's what the Dusters did for the last 20 years. And that's where we're at now. And luckily it worked for us. We built a great scene that is very loyal, much like that jamgrass scene that they have. You know, the String Cheese Incident has their fans, and the Yonder Mountain, you know, and we opened for Yonder Mountain. That was also a big pivotal moment for us because we learned a lot from them and what could be possible, and how the young crowd really does dig bluegrass. So taking that foundational sort of chops that we had, the virtuosic, you know, musicianship, and then marrying that with the idea that we could freely jam
Yeah.
in a scene like the Grateful Dead fans or some of the festivals that we were playing at the time, like RockyGrass, Telluride. We were getting into some of these festivals in San Francisco, some of the just, you know, Gray Fox, some of these more edgy, that people would like the edgier stuff, you know, and that started to really pay off when we started doing that. And then doing the hard ticket, you know, things around the country in the winter and the off time is how we built our audience. And but I think we were so I think the reputation at the time of jamgrass, quote unquote, music, you know, of the lineage of String Cheese Incident and Leftover Salmon of being a big part of that. But also, I think really it's mainly Yonder. Yonder Mountain String Band was the quintessential string band, I think, for the scene. You know, they don't have drums, they don't have none of that stuff. But yet at the
Nope.
same time, they didn't really also have like, you know, like no offense, but like they didn't have like the Nashville musician chops either. So they had their own way of making music, and it had a sound that became its own. And maybe it was like kind of Colorado too, that sort of contributed to that sound. But us as the Dusters, where we came in, it was we took our musicianship and our chops and we learned from what Yonder showed us to do with these jams and different ways we can kind of take off, and the other guys we were paying attention to. And so I think that's what made us kind of like the primal, the main, I don't know, one of the main pivotal bands for the actual like traditional bluegrass scene to start jamming. And now you hear it kind of a lot because, you know, a lot of our peers in the industry coming up through the ranks, many of the bands that are doing it now are all like using these techniques where they're, you know, going off on jams, whether that be, you know, designed or unplanned improv parts and that kind of thing. And, you know, we can't take full credit, but I will say we played a huge role in that for sure.
Well, you can't take credit, but I can definitely take credit for you guys because you're 1,000% fucking correct, buddy.
Yeah.
Like you are literally a pillar in the community, and you guys are one of those bands that I always say is part of what made it what it is today. And like you were talking about, is it's a whole pie, right? But each slice was a little bit different at that time, and we didn't know how fucking lucky we were, right? Because now I'm seeing Leftover, I'm seeing Yonder, I'm seeing the Dusters, I'm seeing all these bands, but at that time, like, it wasn't like the cool thing to do, right? Like, it was like, oh, you listen to bluegrass, you like country music? I'm like, well, yes, but no, like, you gotta understand. And,
Right.
and it's been crazy because like now you come and you've had some of these names that blow up. I mean, you got a Dweller shirt on, right? So we talk about like the greasy gator bluegrass, right? Like that's a whole different tone, and we fucking love Torrin and those boys and that sound, and it's different. But you guys were able to springboard and give people the ability to play with it and to find their voices. And when we have interviews with bands, I always love talking about their foundation and like where they came from, because that gives me insight to their sound, right? And it starts to figure out like, okay, here's who they were listening to, here's who their dad had them listening to, this is the style that they started to learn to play in. And for you guys, Shay and I talk about this all the time, like the Dusters is one of those bands after you see them you're like, fuck, how come I don't see them more? Because you guys are always so tight, you keep the crowd so captivated, right? And it's when people are like, oh, bluegrass, I'm like, here, listen to this, just listen to this, right? And you guys are always one of those first bands that I kind of put in. But so you're getting these as a band, right? And you're doing it for 20 years, but you yourself as a musician, you want to have your own voice, right? And you want to start challenging yourself. And I remember, I'm pretty sure that your first solo album came out during COVID, right?
Well, this will be my 8th studio record, and I go all the way back
Oh,
to
fuck. Well, make me feel like an
1998,
asshole,
I think,
Jeremy.
Not even
Jesus
close,
Christ.
Kodi.
I think I go back to the 90s, man, so it's all good.
Okay, so let me throw in my cassette tape, my Jeremy Garrett cassette tape, and let's learn it, me, buddy. So if back in '98, right? Like that's when you're in the grind in your Nashville days of what's going on. So like from transcending from an individual or a solo artist to being in this band, like what is it that you're doing? Because Shay and I talked about it, like your most recent solo albums, the different sound, right, and the feel that it has. And so it'd be interesting to hear like from '98, and now I'm a dickhead, so learned me, and then I can go listen, and then I'll be better prepared next time.
I think a lot of people don't know, you know, and in fact, people in the industry, I talk about this with, I find this response kind of a lot because I think a lot of people think that guys like me, when I make a record, I already have my main band, the Stringdusters. It's badass. I don't really, you know, like they just think that's the thing. So the music I make on my own is what you would call a side project. And I personally freaking hate that term because I started out as a solo person first. And then I joined the Dusters and we put all that together. And that was a commitment that I made with my life to make this sick band. But I really do feel like an artist, you know, an individual artist first. And I love the Stringdusters with all my heart, and it's Dusters for life as far as I'm concerned. But there's also a role that I sort of play within that unit. And we're all brothers. We're all we all love each other still after all this time. We're all super tight. We really support each other, and we've come up with a very good thing that's very successful for who we are and what we do. It feels like we have a democracy. It's fully democratic. Like it hardly ever comes down to a vote, but if it does, we vote on everything. There's no leader of the group or anything like that. And that includes just sort of the way the whole music is delegated out too on stage. You know, we share the singing and the solos and the jamming and all that stuff. And we're all like individual virtuosic musicians, trying to do our own thing. But I think that's also what makes the Dusters successful in some ways, is all of us together doing our thing. But for me as an individual, there's so much more depth to what I do, I feel like, than what I'm able to offer in the Stringdusters. So that drives me to do my thing called a solo career. And I write a lot of songs. I write hundreds of songs, in a year, and a lot of those don't even come across the Dusters plate. Some, I try to pick the very best songs for what I think will work for what the Dusters do. But then there's this whole other bunch of songs that I co-write with people, and songs that I really truly love, and things that really almost speak to me more than what I do in the Dusters in a way. Like, there's songs from my heart. There's songs that I kind of, some of them I just love to sing because they're just like, they're me more than anything else. And I'd love to arrange music and produce music. And so I do some of that as well. And so producing my own records is like the ultimate for me. That's all hands on for me. That's everything from start to finish: writing, arranging the songs, picking who's going to play on the record, and all, from start to finish. So it's definitely a labor of love, but it's something I take very seriously, and it's very passionate for me. And I try to go out there and even play, dates around, shows around that music in order to try to expand what I'm doing there. And I'd like to try to do that more and more as time goes on, and see that kind of part of my career flourish just a little bit more, It's been hard with the Dusters being so busy, and now with our 20th year, we're getting ready to pick it up like we never have before, actually. But it's all good. I think it's all, we're just music makers, all of us, all five guys in there, and it oozes out into other ways. And for me, it just, doing the solo thing is how I fully feel satisfied, I guess you could say. Like, it allows me the ability to be in the Dusters and be happy. You know what I mean?
Well, and you can still scratch that itch, right?
It scratches that itch, and I can go and rage in the Dusters, and I don't have to worry about my ego needing more, because I know I can get it elsewhere when I do my own solo thing, and so it's just a good thing in that way. And I learn a lot, and I'm challenged by the musicians I play with in my solo thing. I have a guy named Ryan Kavanaugh, who's one of the best banjo players in the entire world, bar none.
I was going to ask who's playing banjo on that
album. If you ever hear him, he's one of the most ridiculous banjo players on planet Earth, for sure. It's insane. I call him a genius. I think he probably is a genius at what he does on the banjo. And so to play against a dude like that is extremely challenging. I love it because it really pushes me, because I know I'm the man when I'm in the Stringdusters. I have full confidence in my abilities, but I get it next to a dude like that, and I forget, oh yeah, I need to stay on my toes. I need to really push myself so I get to that edge, because that's important to me. I don't want to ever fade away in this industry. I want to go out with fire all the way to the end. I see myself being in this industry forever, on into the legacy act days, and I use guys like, Del McCurry for inspiration, of course, a cat that's been around doing it forever at a high level. So playing
and
with
he's
guys
still
like,
polished as can be.
Oh, just killing it. So just, playing next to guys like Ryan Kavanaugh is so fun for me, to push me to that next level. And then I can go back to my band, the Stringdusters, and I'm even better there than I was before. So it's just a lot of fun to kind of just keep that cycle going, and it helps keep pushing the musicianship up, because, it is a very competitive industry, and unless you make a lot of money and expect to retire early, you're going to be in this for the long haul, man. And I do great, financially speaking, but I just, I have a lot of drive and a lot of focus on my career and making it happen in the best and the highest capacity that I can. I guess I'm just a really driven person, and so yeah, doing the solo thing is how I outlet that stuff, I guess, and that energy.
Well, I can't let you slip this in and just not talk about it. So you talked about writing thousands of songs. And for me, what I love is I love the songs that you're able to write and the emotion that you can put into them, and how you can weave these stories together that have such this pronounced feeling. And for you to be like, yeah, I write thousands of songs when people are struggling to write like a single song. So for you, what is it about your brain or your style or what's working? Are you always jotting it in your phone or in a note? Like how does that start with you?
Yeah, good question. I have been writing songs since I was pretty young, maybe 11 or 12. Just writing them down in a notebook, mostly just keeping the tune in my head. Excuse me, but the thing, the phone is the handiest thing in the world for a songwriter because it's always right there in your pocket. Yeah, I can dictate lyrics. My voice memos is key. That's where I do a lot of my work. I might even just record little pieces as I'm driving down the road, or if I have my guitar in my hands, I might, record a little riff that I might use later. I co-write a lot. I do write some myself too, but I co-write a lot, and it's in co-writing. It's like a double whammy because you're doing two things. You're kind of like getting a good song, hopefully, and you're also making a business connection. It's stronger and doing some things out of there because now two people can maybe promote the song as opposed to one person. But I find it funny that I have put some songs out there in the world to pitch to other folks to record, and I have gotten some interest, and I've definitely had some cuts, but they tend to just all lay here with me. I record them, and somehow either I record them with the Dusters or I'll record them on my solo records. And I love my songs. I love them because I wrote them. I love them because they mean something to me. And it's not that I don't want them to mean something to somebody else, but I feel like if they really stick with me for a while and they're sticking, the melody is staying in my head, it's something that's popping back to me. If it's content wise, if it's something that it's still speaking to me, I feel like other people are going to be able to get something from that too. And so I kind of let them grow and just sort of, take their own life, but uh, over time. But I end up cutting a lot of my own songs and not really pitching them around. And I have of course, a back catalog that I'm willing to send to people if they ask me. I definitely do it. And like I said, I've gotten a few things out there, but uh, I think my songs are kind of like mainly for me. And everybody's different. I feel like in that way. Sometimes I just try to write a good song. I'm not really trying to write a bluegrass song necessarily, or any kind of type of song, but just kind of whatever riff or whatever lyric I'm excited about at the moment is what I try to go for. And
Who were some of the songwriters that you really looked into or were inspired by as you started coming up?
well, definitely cut my teeth on the bluegrassers, like the old school dudes, even like the very kind of simple songs that have stood the test of time as standard songs in bluegrass, like the Stanley Brothers, Ralph
Yeah.
Stanley, anything that they did, I love. Um, Definitely got into other folks later on, like well, I don't know about their ability to write songs, but their ability to pick songs. I was always interested in the sounds that they picked, like Alison Krauss and Union Station. Anything that they did, like the Dan Tominski songs or the Ron Block songs, I just love those vibes. And so when I was early on cutting my teeth in songwriting, some of those vibes were kind of what I was going after. All the way to later, doing some Larry Sparks stuff. And then, of course, getting into the more modern, more heavy lyricists like Leonard Cohen and people like that just could, Harley Allen, that could spin a lyric and just absolutely tear your real heart out. And realizing that I'm not really that kind of songwriter. I'm more of a pragmatic and I don't know, just I have an approach that comes from my old time upbringing, I guess, where I try to let those influences shine through, those that old time bluegrass upbringing, and that sort of makes it stylistically different than everyone else, I think, in a lot of ways, and it makes it uniquely mine, and hopefully good sounding to the human ear. But
It,
beyond that, I don't really have a lot of confidence sometimes in my own songs. Sometimes I get done writing one and I'm like, oh, that song kicks ass. And that might only be like for a week, and then I'm kind of tired of it. Or I'll be like, I need to change that line. Or sometimes I get done and I'm like, that song will never see the light of day. So it just kind of depends, really for
It
me. I'm picky about lyrics and content, and then melody, especially how the melody fits into the song. That's a big for me. So
it's so wild to hear you say that, because Shay and I, we have these conversations often, and time again, artists are like, nope, hate it, and we're like, what? That's like so great. Why? What do you not like about this? And it's wild because you're like, oh, I don't know if, and all I'm thinking about is all your lyrics do and tone is convey a message, right? So your newest album that just came out at the end of June, I listened to it before I read anything about it because I just wanted to hear it. And then I went and re-listened to it after I had heard that you recorded it all up at your cabin home. And for me, like, understanding like the isolation and now some of that like heaviness of that album, it like really permeated, because now I'm envisioning you sitting around and like looping these things and like playing these songs in this like cabin in the forest with nothing around you, right? And you're talking about these powerful messages. And Shay and I, we were joking, it's like, it's that meme on the internet where it's like the person in the rainbow, and it's like what bluegrass music sounds like, and then it's like the goth girl, and it's like what the lyrics say, and it's and it's so cool because it like sounds so fucking beautiful, but it's also like so fucking heavy. And I wanted to talk to you about this new album because that was my interpretation, right? And before I even asked Shay, I was like, hey, did you hear, what did you think? And he's like, yeah, man. And so for me, I would love to hear the artist perspective. Sometimes people try to wiggle free and be like, oh, it's up to you, the interpret. Fuck that. I really want to know, Jeremy, like, where were you at when you were putting together this? Because obviously you have so many songs to choose from as you're putting together this album, and then you're doing it in such a special way. What was that like?
Well, I've done a bunch of records by now, co-producing the Dusters included, so between the two and other things, I've done many, many, many records. And with each one, I try to bring something new in an idea of how to record it, or what approach I'm going to try to do to bring it together. And, this one, was, I don't know how else to say it other than like, I live on this place in the middle of the woods called Storm Mountain, and it's literally at the end of a dirt road, and there's nothing around here. I live by myself out here in my little family, and there's a few people around, I guess, but they're pretty far down the road, and it's just pretty hardcore. And most people, I don't think, would be able to do that. Like a lot of people wouldn't be able to put up with driving 45 minutes to the nearest grocery store, and then or digging out your F-150 from 5 feet of snow, or dealing with like having to have a permit to drive in and out one time a day because of forest fires or floods or a variety of other things that's happened while I've lived here. I mean, this place can really get crazy. And, I've been evacuated a few times for fires. And so all of those things were just a metaphor I couldn't really resist for this record. And it just kind of dawned on me, these songs that I had coming together, and some of them I had to glean from the past. I wanted to redo a few things that I had done in the past, and I felt like it was a perfect time. I didn't want to be like heavy per se with this record, but I definitely wanted to get deep on content. I didn't want it to be about train, even though there's a train song on the record. I didn't want it to be about trains. I didn't want it to be just about trains or biscuits and gravy or normal bluegrass topics. I wanted to really dig deep to what bluegrass could really be, and with the progressive sound, and especially with a guy as colorful as Ryan Kavanaugh on the banjo, that the types of things that he could add to my music, and really make it shine. That was kind of what I was going for. I recorded the whole thing in a one-room studio in Fort Collins with my buddy Darren Raddick, and we all four of us set up. And I like to do it that way. In the past, I've done a lot of records where I've just piecemealed it together, either done one track with one set of guys or another track with another set of guys. But this was like a band type record where I used all the same guys for the all the songs, the tracks, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And those guys are so good. We just got in one room and used a few baffles, and there was no bleed or anything. We just recorded it all. And then when it was done, I took everything else up here to my studio and finished it up here. All my parts were done up here in my studio, my vocals and fiddle. I could just really take my time and dig in. And I'd never really done a record like that where I could just, it didn't matter if my voice sounded like crap one day. I could just go back to the house and never mind it. And, a couple of days go by and go back out and try it again. So that was really fun. I felt like I got a really good, vocal quality from what I did. I was able to concentrate on my fiddle parts and not worry about studio time and money and all that stuff that plays into it. And then the other thing I wanted to do was really concentrate as hard as I could on the harmony vocals. A lot of times that's the last step on a record, and it gets skipped because, it's money. It's a lot of extra money because those harmony singers are like paying extra musicians. Every one you use, you got to pay for every track, and it adds up quick. And those guys are specialists in their own right. They should be paid. So it's all good. It's a lot of money, and it gets expensive. So sometimes I sing my own harmonies because it's just cheap to do it that way, But this time I wanted to really integrate other singers with their voices to make it really pop. And so I had Lindsay Lou, who I'd known a little bit before but never really worked with, come in and sing some of the harmonies, and she blew me away, man.
Her
I'm
voice
pretty particular
is
on the harmonies.
outstanding.
Yeah, I'm pretty particular on harmonies. I grew up, singing in church, and I know all the parts and intervals and how to sing all the different things. And I'm usually the guru for vocals in a session, but I just left it up to her, totally trusted her, and she blew me away. She sang some stuff that I wouldn't have expected anyone to sing, and it kind of made the part way better. And I was just really, I love it when that stuff happens. I freaking love it when that happens. And that's the gamble you take when you just kind of hire somebody sight unseen, and you're not going to be there maybe for the session. So you hope they do a great job. And she did. She knocked it out of the park. And then I call on my buddy Josh Schilling a lot. He can do anything. He should be a superstar, and he kind of is. But he sings all the parts, same thing, and plays keyboards and guitar and every other thing that you could think of. But he sang a lot of the harmonies on there as well throughout the record. And then a few other guys, like I had Steve McMurray from Acoustic Syndicate sing tenor on a couple of tracks. And just really great voices that I love to blend with. It was a lot of fun.
Well, it's crazy because I've seen you loop things, right? And so now hearing you talk and hear as you're producing this in your mind, just recreating the story of how you're layering these different sounds and tones together. How did you end up feeling about the album once it's out? Because for us as fans, I love it. I think that it's amazing. I think it's a completely different sound, but it's true to you. It still allows opportunity, which is why I want to come and see you live to see where you would kind of stretch some of these things out if you were to choose to do so, or if that's not something that you would do on the solo act.
I would definitely. I hope to bring some of these songs out to light in September when I do a small run in Colorado, in Nederland, and at Horsetooth, the Tooth Fest. And, that's my hope, is to try to start bringing out some of these things as I go. I've been doing a lot of the songs that I have recorded over the years with my bluegrass unit wherever I perform. So I expect to do, most of these as well. And, definitely this was a different record for me. It's hard to say. I mean, I have a pride in it because I definitely did the best job that I could do. I made the best music I could make at the time. I put my heart and soul, everything I had into it. I spent a ton of money making the record, like financially speaking. And I put a lot of time into planning it out and talking about it and, putting it into the world. And it's I hope that there's people out there that get a good message from this record, something that hits their heart in a way that can maybe help them through a struggle, or just makes them think about something in a way they hadn't thought of before. And that's my job, I feel like, as a musician, really at the end of the day, is to do that and maybe bring some joy along the way, and if I've done that, I've had a successful project. So
only asking questions they want the answers to.
Yeah.
But for me, you already said, hey, not the train songs. I was surprised by the selection of Slow Train.
Yeah.
for that on there. And then obviously you made it your own. But so what goes into like picking covers and things like this? Because we talk about your roots and tradition, right? I just saw you at RockyGrass, which is a traditional bluegrass festival. You guys end up blowing the roof off with a fucking Avicii cover that I've heard you play before, but I would have never put it on my bingo card for RockyGrass because I would have been like, nope, it's all the old folk in the chairs. They're going to get up and walk away. So like, how do you guys pick some of those things and push some of these limits and then also take some of these other things and like still make them your own?
Well, in my opinion, the entire world is bluegrass. It really is. Like, you can make anything bluegrass. We did an Ozzy Osbourne cover that night too.
Yeah, you sure did.
I'm so mad I missed that show.
Crazy Train. It was fucking. It was insane. Yeah.
You can do anything.
Kodi was texting me about it, and I was like, "Shut up! I don't want to know how much fun you're having, ass."
I do love to. Good covers are cool. I appreciate the originals more. That's where my heart is usually geared. But I also appreciate that some people, I don't know, they need a cover to sort of grasp who you are as a musician. I don't know how else to say that. That's the way it's been explained to me.
That's what I tell people is like,
yeah,
the covers allow people to be comfortable with something that they already know. Yeah. And then they see what you can do with it, and then they go, okay, well now let me check out what's going on. Whereas if I were to go and send just like, here's an original, right? Now obviously there's lots of times where it's like, hey, this is awesome. But with some of these covers, you can bleed into these other audiences that would never have thought that they would like bluegrass, right? And like you said, everything's bluegrass. I've heard reggae songs in bluegrass. Like it is. It's just what you make of it, and that sound is so beautiful. And I think that the covers is like a safety blanket, right? It's like something that people already know, and then they can come back to. Because, like, I will tell you right now, the crowd when you guys were playing Ozzy and playing Avicii, compared, like, even when you were playing Colorado, right? You're in Colorado, we fucking love it. But for some of these other people that may not know, it allows them to latch on to something.
It's exciting, and we're kind of ambassadors, I feel like, in that way for bluegrass, because I don't know how many times, in the olden days when we used to like go out to the crowd a lot more, we would walk out there and talk to people and be like, yeah, man, my wife hates bluegrass, but she likes you guys. So, there's something about us that's palatable, in that way. And we can do a cover. And that's one of the ways you can draw folks that are on the fringe of, like not everyone can get into Del McCoury or Ralph Stanley. I freaking love that stuff. To me, there's nothing better.
They fucking should, but Jeremy. They're just wrong, okay? Like if you can't, like, I'm sorry.
You got to give them a gateway. And that should be probably the Dusters, or maybe Alison Krauss, or something a little sweeter and more chill. And then, then you can bring in the Stanley Brothers, and they're going to love it once they get into the vibe,
What I love to do is give people Dusters studio songs, like the album version, and then I'll send them the Nugs version or the live. I'm like, here, check this out. It's like, oh my God, this is like, it's like a whole different fucking song. I'm like, yes, this is it. And they're like, how do you go see the same bands over and over? Because every time they do it different, right? Same but different. But and that's what's so much fun and so cool to see. So you have some shows coming up in Colorado. I know that you guys just got finished doing your Dwellers Leftover Dusters run. Where else can people come and check you out on the road? Where can they follow you, Jeremy? I know that I'm listening to your new album online streaming because I'm a terrible person. But where should we send the folks?
You can definitely stream my music anywhere you listen to music, and I don't care. I say do it all you want, and wherever you can, it's awesome. There's, politics to navigate around that stuff, but I can't be involved in them. I'm just a little guy. So have fun. And then the other side of the thing is, you can if you order my physical copy of my record on my website, you'll actually get an extra bonus track that's not available on streaming. And you can get vinyl now. And this is my first vinyl record as well. The first one I ever did. So I'm super stoked about that. But my website is garrettgrass.com if you want to check that out. And, I'll be playing September the 27th at the Caribou Room in Nederland, Colorado. And I need everyone to tell their friends about it and come out, because I need to fill that
Let's
place so I can make a big impression on my business partners. And
let's pack it out for Jeremy, you guys.
I feel like we could do that.
I don't
let's
think
pack
that's going to be much of a problem at all. We'll pack it up for you, but I'll come wear my neon yellow shirt for you, bud. We'll rock it out, and I'll watch you saw that fucking thing in half. Jeremy, I can't thank you enough. I took every urge to not do this, but I'm going to do it at the last second. How many pairs of glasses do you own? Because Jesus Christ, it's fucking beautiful, and I love it.
Thanks, man. They've gone by the wayside. I've had these a while. I should probably change it up, but I get a lot of compliments on the yellow, so I don't know. Maybe I'll stick with yellow for a while.
Yes. See, I'm gonna buy you a high vis pair. I'm like, here we go, and that's become the thing. But thank you so much, brother. We will make sure, go and look in the descriptions. We'll give you all the information. Go listen to Jeremy. Share the music with your friends. Don't be an idiot like me. Go back, find out about the other albums, and if you don't know, ask your friends. We'll catch you next week. Thanks, guys.
Peace.